Thank you. I'll be talking, as Janet said, about justice and accountability. And whenever we speak about that, I always feel that what we need to do first is to let the victims speak. So that's what I would like to do tonight. That's how I would like to start, by giving a voice to a victim, to a lady called Habiba Hadžić from a small town of Vlasenica in eastern Bosnia. But before I do that, I need to give you some context. So I need to take you back in time, some 25 years, a quarter of a century. Ms. Habiba Hadžić lived, as I said, in a small eastern Bosnian town of Vlasenica. She was 49 in 1992. In April 1992, she was married, had 2 grown-up sons, and lived in this small town, which was in April 1992 taken over by Yugoslav National Army and other Serb forces. And these new authorities quickly began to implement a policy of ethnic cleansing, of removing all Muslims, and indeed all non-Serbs, from the town. It took 4 or 5 months. By September 1992, virtually all Muslims were removed from the town, and the only ones who remained were detained in a detention facility, main detention facility in the town called Sušica camp. The conditions in that camp are appalling. People were crammed into over-jammed hangars. Mostly civilians were kept in that. Actually, I think almost exclusively civilians, with many women, small children, babies, elderly, kept in those hangars without access to medical care, sleeping on the floor, without proper access to toilets or showers. The prison camps would beat them regularly. Some of them were killed there, and some of them were taken away from the camp and never seen again. So Ms. Hadžić was detained there with her 2 sons, Ernest and Bernes. And sometimes she would sleep between them, sometimes on wooden floors, sometimes on bare concrete. Eventually, roughly 2 months after she was detained, she left the camp. Her health was ruined, but her 2 sons remained in the camp, and she never saw them again. 11 years later, in 2003, Ms. Hadžić came here to The Hague to testify before the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, the ICTY, in a case against the commander of the Sušica camp, whose name is Dragan Nikolić. So let's hear what Ms. Hadžić had to say, and then we can go further.
If I were to tell you everything, what could I tell you? I am a sick woman now. I have high blood sugar. I have a weak heart. It is so bad. My feet went numb while I've been sitting here. I have nothing to hope for. This mother cannot take it much longer. You will see. I will die of sadness and sorrow. My husband is also sick, and he cries often. He hides from me when he cries, but then I follow him, and then we cry. What can we do? I would just like to ask Dragan to tell me where they are, in which mass grave, so that their mother could give them a dignified funeral. I want to give them a proper burial, and then I can go away myself. That is what I have to say.
Is your client prepared to answer the desperate question put to your client as a witness?
Even earlier, I expressed my desire to meet certain persons, including victims and people like Mrs. Hadžić, in order to provide them with some of the information that I have and tell them what I know. Certain things I only heard about, and other things I know for a fact. As far as her sons are concerned, as far as I heard, because I wasn't there when it happened, on the 30th of September, I believe, together with a group of about 40 people, they were taken to Debelo Brdo and liquidated.
Nothing like this ever happened before or after in the courtrooms of the tribunal. Never has a victim approached, directly asked the accused about the location of the mortal remains of their loved ones. So Ms. Hadzic did something really unique, something really bold. When she had the opportunity to grasp justice, she went for it. She, as the Hague Talks put it in their motto, she put the justice in motion. Because justice for Ms. Hadzic, as for many other people who are still to this day searching for their missing loved ones, justice is finding out what happened to them. Justice is finding where their mortal remains are. And justice is giving them a dignified burial, as she said herself. So, Ms. Hadzic used this opportunity to grasp justice, just as 1,000 of other women victims who came here to The Hague to testify about most horrific events that they went through in their lives have done. And it takes huge courage to do that. Many of them have left their hometowns or villages for the first time in their lives, came to a foreign country to speak before unknown people who speak a foreign language, and then to tell these most intimate and most horrific events that they went through. But it's actually thanks to the witnesses that the justice can be achieved. They are the backbone of the justice. Without them, there are no judgments, there are no indictments, there are no established facts. So it is witnesses who give human face to the proceedings. And like Ms. Hadzic, 1,000 of other women came here. And in that process, not just through what the presiding judge called a desperate question of the victim, but through the whole process of testifying, coming here to The Hague, telling your story for the world and the history to remember it, to become a part of a judicial record, Ms. Hadzic has transformed herself, her role as a victim. She stopped being powerless. Because for victims of international crimes, there's often nothing they can do about these horrific wrongs that have been done against them. Sometimes the perpetrator would live in another country out of reach of the authorities. Sometimes there would just be no investigation, even though the perpetrator still lives in the same town. And when you go to a hospital or take your kids out for a walk, you meet your prison or detention camp abuser. So this process of coming and testifying actually means that Ms. Hadzic and 1,000 of other women have stopped being just passive recipients of ill fate. They took agency and they become active protagonists in the process of achieving justice. And what the witnesses actually contribute to is the establishment of facts. And facts, especially judicially established facts, are crucial for a post-conflict society. Because we must understand that the wars do not end the moment the guns are silenced. They continue for long, much longer, especially in the minds of men and women. Because these wartime divisions between us and them, they don't stop when the peace treaty is signed. They continue. And this division between our victims, and their victims, also continues. And it's understandable if you think about it, because to accept that there are their victims, that means you have to accept that mass violence, torture, rape, and murder has been committed in your name, under your flag, perhaps by leaders, supervised by leaders who you have voted for on the elections. So it's much easier to believe in, as they would call them today, alternative facts. For example, surveys show that in Serbia there are many, many more people who still do not believe that genocide was committed in Srebrenica. Many more than those who do believe that. And there are many other alternative facts which are actually taken as facts, not just in Serbia, but across the region. And that's why these judicially established facts, through a fair process where both the prosecution and defense have their say, are so important for post-conflict societies, for transitional justice and for transitional justice processes. And that's what the tribunal did, the ICTY. Empowered by its witnesses, it delivered judicially established facts. The problem is still that the audience in the former Yugoslavia does not want to know, or rather accept, those facts. So at this point, as someone who is coming from the former Yugoslavia and who grew up as a part of the anti-war movement in Serbia, I have to refer to an amazingly brave group of women who actually made these facts count. In Belgrade, in Sarajevo, in Zagreb, women were those who were leading the movement for human rights, the fight for accountability. They were the ones who wouldn't shut up. They were the ones who were talking about the crimes, all crimes, not including the crimes where our people are the perpetrators and their people are the victims. And that was the crime of these women. These women were labeled anything from traitor to witch to beyond, far beyond. But they persevered. They didn't give up. And full disclosure, one of these women, Miss Nataša Kandić from Serbia, was my first mentor and my first boss when I started working in international justice. And to this day, I consider her the role model for someone who is fighting for accountability with facts. And it's not just me, she inspired a whole generation of young people who are now fighting for justice. So Nataša and her fellow human rights activists didn't give up. And by continuing to speak about facts and by being able to rely on the facts, they were able to permeate the public discourse. And many of these facts actually came into the awareness of the people and the societies of the former Yugoslavia. And it was really, in many cases, that these rare organizations which kept the seed of the reason and justice in the war and post-war torn Western Balkans were led by women, by amazing and amazingly brave women. So in my experience, in my career in transitional justice, in international justice, I was always guided and led by women. They were my bosses, sometimes difficult bosses, sometimes supportive bosses, but always amazing colleagues, always amazing assistants and friends. And if I have learned anything in these past dozen years or so, it's that justice is better off when the women are not just heard, but listened to. Whether it's their eyewitness account, their expertise, their passionate and accurate legal argument, it's clear. Women need justice just as much as justice needs women.